All Sails Set, Chapter 7. Yarns spun in the second dog watch. We hear tell of the corposant. The second dog watch, between 6 and 8 of an evening, belongs to the forecastle. There's a sort of unwritten law of the sea that the men are given these 2 hours of freedom for their own. On the Flying Cloud, we took full advantage of this custom during the fair weather of the trades. It was a rest from the rigors behind us and a breathing space in which to stiffen ourselves for the rough work ahead, and we were grateful for it. By this time, Wit had become skilled with his concertina, and its rollicking tones beguiled the hours of the second dog watch, while the oldsters regaled the apprentices with tales of their valor in the 7 seas. Caleb Winthrop was the accepted master of the shanties. In the days when every job aboard a ship was dependent upon human strength, a shanty was like a jorum of rum to power a man's arm. It was Caleb who called the songs for hauling, pumping, or heaving at the capstan. Graybeards, those tunes were, some of them reaching back to the days of Drake himself. Stirring music, too, with the swing of the sea in it. There was a ship, she sailed to Spain. There was a ship, came home again. Oh, roll and go, my Johnny. What d'ye think was in her hold? There was diamonds, there was gold. Roll, oh, roll and go, my Johnny. And what was in her lazarette? Good split peas and bad bull meat. Oh, roll and go, my Johnny. Sometimes of an early evening, Brick and I, leaving the others on deck, would climb hand over hand to the upper rigging, until at last we were sitting astride the royal yard. Below us the ship was lost in darkness. Wit's concertina seemed muted, while the lusty singing reached our ears, softened like music from another sphere. They sang as only sailors sing before the capstan bars, or high amid the rigging for their audience of stars. Remember, a shanty is a song with a powerful beat to it, and the men would do their work to it, and it would help them pull harder and do things in unison together. The dark spires of the mast cut figures of 8 across the sky. The stars hung so close that it almost seemed you could reach up and turn them off. Below us, an acre of canvas swelled eerie white in the darkness, while the trailing wake of the ship vanished in a glimmer of phosphorescence. A few weeks ago, I wouldn't have believed that I'd ever climb up here of my own accord. The wood of the great yards was still warm from the heat of the day. It felt almost alive under the grip of my hands. The creakings and murmurings of the ropes and spars wove their spell about me. The hush-hush from the cutwater whispered its song of the sea in my ear. You are alive, Flying Cloud. The wind is your breath and your breath of life. The sea is your pulse, how steadily it beats for you. With our feet hooked into the royal lifts and our legs swung fore and aft over the yard, Brick and I speculated upon many things. What do you suppose China will be like, Brick? I wondered. Mostly pigtails and pagodas, I calculate, if you can believe the Chinese pictures. All yellow, I'll warrant. Rivers and temples and men. Look, there's the Southern Cross, rising later every night. Looks like a tipsy kite hanging over on her side that way. Why they ever thought it looked like a cross is more'n I can see. There's Sirius. Anybody could find that. It's the brightest one of all. All right then, my lad. Let's see you locate Spica. Together we scanned the heavens for a glimpse of Spica. A full 10 minutes before we found her, pale as a ghost. Then we must search for Algol, flickering like a demon's fire, and Canopus, queen of the southern sky. What are they looking for? Constellations. What do you suppose tea looks like a-growin', and cinnamon and tapioca? We'll know afore long now. Too bad we can't keep on going, right around the world, Brick. We'll do that next trip, Thatch. We'll be able seamen by then, and any smart owners will be glad to sign us on. Gore, Thatch, he exulted suddenly. This is the only life. Give me a cutlass and bring on your pirates, and I'll slit them from clew to earring. On the deck we found Tom Plunkett, better known as Chips, surrounded by a rapt audience as he drew on a wheezing pipe and yarned of old sea ways. Tom was a grizzled salt who had served his time before the mast in the East Indiamen and fought his way up through the Yankee hellships. At 60-odd, he was ruddy and clear of eye. His compact frame was as tough as the rock maple of the Cloud's keel. He was a past master of sea lore and a staunch believer in the ancient superstitions so close to the heart of all true sailormen. Superstition seems as much a part of the ship herself as the water she sails in. It enters with the timber scarfed into her keel. It plays its part in her launch, her name, her days, and hours of departure. As convoy on her voyages, it can promise good luck or ill. It can cause fair winds to blow or foul. And when the time comes, it assures a port of rest off Fiddler's Green or in the grim locker of Davy Jones, as the case may be. Old Tom drew on his pipe and looked cautiously around, lowering his voice the while. I had a hand in the building of this year Calipper, he whispered. The builders had spoken a word for me, and thinks I, if I'm a-going to sail on that there ship, there's 2 things I'm going to see to. We leaned forward with ears a-peak. What was that, Tom? Lanny asked eagerly. Aye, Tom, the rest of us echoed. Tell us what it was. Came a long draw on the pipe as old Tom extracted the full enjoyment of the center of the stage. Then, while a bit of stolen wood mortised into the keel makes a ship sail faster o' nights. I saw to that, though there's not as knows it as you lads can stow under your hats. And you lads can stow it under your hats. This I knew was pure fiction, as the old man had boarded the Cloud in New York, and there laid eyes on her for the first time. But not for anything would I have discredited his tale, and it was good fun to draw him out. What was the second thing you did for the Cloud? Brick queried. Tom chuckled. A silver coin placed in the mainmast's step, came his answer. Woe unto the ship, hearties, as weighs anchor without that. She may make many a successful voyage, but Davy Jones'll lick her bones in the end. Many other things he told us, some of which I had heard and others that were new to my ear. A black cat, he claimed, should not even be mentioned, for she carries a gale in her tail. And never let me hear one of you lads a-whistling, he proclaimed. It'll be keel-hauling for you, I warrant. A proper able seaman, now, who's come up through the hawse pipe, can whistle to the blessed saints o' the sailor. San Antonio or St. Nicholas, provided there's a dead calm, that is, but not no apprentice, no sir. I had always heard that clergymen and women brought bad luck at sea, so I questioned Tom on the reasons for this particular notion. Humph, he grunted an answer. What else can a clergyman do aboard a ship, 'cept console the dying and bury the dead? Tempting fate to carry 'em, I calls it. But why should women bring bad luck at sea, Tom? The old man scratched his head with puzzled fingers, silenced for a moment. Wall, he said lamely, at last. Why else, 'cept that the sea's the last place in the world for 'em. Tom hitched himself closer to us and lowered his voice till it was but a whisper. As for that bosun, he muttered, keep a weathered eye on him. Bosun. A Roosian, he calls himself, but I'm here to claim as he's a Roosian Finn, and there's not worse aboard a ship. Should he stick his knife in the mast, hurricanes'll dog us, and calms beset, and we'll be lucky not to be lost on a lee shore. They brings bad luck to others, them Roosian Finns, and good luck to their souls. Their rum bottle is near full or empty, near full nor empty, but always awash, and all they has to do is thrust a hand in their pocket to produce a gold doubloon. These things Tom Plunkett told us, not as a man relates a yarn, but as one who states a testament of faith. Thus he delivered, as actual occurrence, the story of the Flying Dutchman. Aye, that bloody Cape Horn we're bearing down on is the haunt o' her, he muttered. A ruddy Dutch windbag she were, with a blaspheming heathen walking her poop. He tackled and he beat, but he couldn't round the pitch o' the Cape. So what does he do but curse the blessed saints? Aye, can ye believe it? 'Tis a fact, and a proper reward he draws from 'em too. They condemns him to keep on sailing to the crack o' doom, without e'er putting into port. Why, we caught but gall to drink and red-hot iron, with naught but gall to drink and red-hot iron to eat, and a watch to keep that will last till Judgment Day. Did you ever see her, Tom? Lanny asked breathlessly. Aye, Tom, did you? Nay, the old man shivered, but once I were close enough to hear the sounds a-comin' from her, like the howlin' o' wolves, it were, right off the pitch o' the Cape, too, and near enough in all truth, for it brought white squalls upon us, and tempests, and our rum soured, and all our food turned to beans. I hope we don't run into, began Whit, when the old man silenced him by clapping one paw over the lad's mouth. Don't speak on it, he cried. She's out there still, a-beatin' and a-beatin' into the eye o' the wind, with the stars shinin' through her sails, and them sounds a-howlin' comin' from her. He snapped his jaw shut and puffed vigorously, and it was evident that he thought we had dwelt too long upon this dangerous subject. It took some minutes to beguile him into farther discussion. So they're talking about the Flying Dutchman, which is supposedly a cursed ship that haunts the Horn. Have you ever seen St. Elmo's fire, Tom? Asked Brick. The Corposant? Aye, and more than once. Last time was in the Barque Morning Star, on a lee shore off the Hatteras. We knew not if we'd e'er lay eyes on our loved ones again, when suddenly, whiles the storm was at its blackest, I saw it twice. First a small glittering ball of fire at the masthead, second on the deck, bluish like a star. And when I saw it, I tell ye, lads, I shook like a gaff topsail in a squall. For death comes behind it, like a cart after a horse. That night the captain was washed off the poop, and the second mate fell from the mainmast cross trees, and it were only by the grace of God that we e'er made port at all. Aye, I've seen it happen too often. Death follows in the wake of the Corposant. In spite of ourselves, we shivered. There was a depth of conviction behind the old man's statement that impressed itself upon the most skeptical of us. Small wonder, I reflected, that the sailors are superstitious mortals. They must deal at first hand with the most unknowable forces, the sea. The lonely nature of a life where oftentimes months pass without sight of another sail, gives rise to strange imaginings. A gloom had settled upon us, and thinking to lighten it, Brick Warner hailed Ben Backstay. Ho, Ben, he cried. Let's have that browsing tale of yours about getting your walking papers in mid-ocean. Ben's one blue eye twinkled with fun. What? He chuckled. You mean to say all you lads ain't never heard about the time I got my walking papers in the mid-Pacific? He cast his eye in Whit's direction, for Whit, being of solemn turn of mind, and slow to catch the sparkle of a joke, was the sort of audience Ben Backstay relished most. Walking papers in mid-ocean? Demanded Whit, gulping the bait at a swallow. Where could you walk to? Wall, you see, my lad, it was like this. Ben settled back, scratched a match on the bowl of his pipe, and prepared to take his 2 draws and a spit. The rest of us shifted closer, willing to bend an ear for as long as he should prove entertaining. It was when I was serving as a cabin boy on the fine ship Minervy, more years ago than the whole lot of you could compute on your fingers. We was 52 days out when it happened. Yes, sirree, right in the middle of the Pacific Ocean I got my walking papers. And it's one thing to get 'em served to you on land where you got something solid under your pins, and still another to find yourself in the briny blue without so much as a bit of planking to rest your foot on. Come get along with your yarn, Ben, growled Caleb Winthrop. This yawn about his bad sailing. Steer small and make straight wake. Ben cast a reproachful eye in Caleb's direction. As I was saying, afore being interrupted, it was a fine afternoon, and the Minerve was frisking along on a southwesterly course. I had heard the mate say, as he was only about 50 miles from the Galapagos, long about sundown the wind squalled up and we took in the Ryals and Tagans. I was standing on the weather side of the forecastle when, all of a sudden, I saw a porpoise rolling along the top of the water, looking as cocky as you please. He sort of walled one eye at me as much as to say, "Get your hooks into me if you can." Wall, lads, he was a sight to tempt a hungry sailor, I tell ye. Since leaving port we'd had no fresh food, and I knew that a porpoise could furnish a grand keel and upper works for a chowder. So he's saying he wanted to catch the porpoise to cook it. A porpoise is like a dolphin. So I ran to the longboat and got a harpoon, and I clumb out on the bowsprit and down on the martingale stay before you could say Davy Jones. Along comes Mr. Porpoise, frisking his tail right under my very feet. I let drive the harpoon with all my strength. A fine drive, as it were, too, only I missed him. Humph, snorted Ben Puckett. How long d'ye say you'd been to sea? As I was saying, Ben continued imperviously, by some ill chance I missed him, and not having took the precaution of making a turn with the rope that was fastened to the harpoon, I lost my foothold and splashed into the sea. With a great churning and a grinding, the ship passed right over me. When I shook the water out of my eyes and caught my breath, there was the Minerve halfway out on the horizon, and though I blew like a grumpus and bellowed like a bull, no one on that ruddy ship heard me. Night was setting down by now, and in no time the Minerve was lost to sight. I began to take stock of the situation, and it looked like there was plenty of room for improvement. I still had hold of the harpoon, and the wooden shaft supported me somewhat. The moon was coming up, and I took a squint around in the hopes they might have missed me in the Minerve by this time, and put about. But nary a solitary thing but water and sky and my own lone self. So he shot the harpoon at the porpoise, missed, fell into the water, and the ship sailed away. No one realized he'd fallen over. All in a sudden I spied a dark-looking something floating on the water, not a cable length away. What could it be? My heart quickened a beat, and I can tell ye, as it drifted toward me, I took a grip on my harpoon, and what do you lads think it was? Ben paused with good effect. Of one accord we demanded, "What?" "A loggerhead turtle. One of them Galapagos boys. Sound asleep on top of the water he was, too. He must have been a good 6 foot long, and I'll lay wager he weighed 500 pounds. A loggerhead sea turtle. I knew then that Providence hadn't altogether deserted a poor sailor. I made up my mind that a turtle should take me in tow. I knew that Galapagos must lie somewhere to the east, for the wind had been blowing out of the west, and I knew that the current sets nearly due east in the Pacific when near the equator. And a mighty good thing it will be for me, for some of you lads, to learn these things, in case you should ever be in such a predicament as I was. Well, as I was saying, I figured that loggerhead ought to give me a tow to the Galapagos, where I could pick up some vessel for home or the Indies. So I paddled gently toward him and swam up under his stern. With one hand I threw the bight of harpoon line over his head, and with the other I grabbed him by the tail. Well, sir, that turtle woke with a bang. If I hadn't been onto the tricks of them fellers, I had been in a bad way. He had no idea, of course, what matter a critter had him by the tail, so first panic prompted him to plunge. I was ready for him. I seized onto his rear flippers and bore down on him with all my weight. For the life of him, he couldn't get his blinking head under, much less his clumsy hulk. So off he went, at a good 6 knots, towing me after him. By pushing at one flipper and pulling at the other, I managed to steer a course due east, near as I could judge from the bearing o' the moon. But being dragged through the water by a ruddy sea turtle ain't all beer and skittles. When I finally was about tuckered and wondering how much longer I could hold out, what do I see but the dark shape o' land off my starboard bows? Galapagos. And ne'er was a glimpse of terra firma more welcome to a mariner after an 8 months' passage from Chiny. The only thing I was afraid of now was that Mr. Loggerhead would tire out afore he reached land, 'cause he was a breathing hard by this time, I can tell ye. But no siree, he beached me right and proper on the shores of Galapagos, and I clum up out of reach of the surf, and lay me down on the sand and slept like the dead till the sun waked me up. And just as I was a-thinking that I'd a been better off in the sea than on that wild strip of shore, I got the second surprise of my life. What do you lads think I saw? What? We breathed. The Minerve. Yep, anchored right out in the bay. Seems like she'd sprung a leak about her rudder post and put into Galapagos for repairs. And were my shipmates astonished to see Ben Backstay alive and in the flesh? Put out too, they was, because they'd already divvied up my belongings amongst them. Well, it is an astonishing story, and that's a fact, acknowledged Wit solemnly. But are you sure it's all true, Ben? Ben bit off half a fathom of Irish twist, and his one blue eye was filled with reproach as he turned it upon Wit. Every word as true as the Bowditch Navigator, and you can lay to that, he swore. All hands were working now in anticipation of the gales and seas of the roaring 40s. In the watch below, the older men were getting their gear in shape for the bleak weather ahead. Oilskins were being tarred and mended, sea boots repaired, holes patched wherever needed, and woolen underclothes darned. For Jack can ply a skillful needle when there is no woman to do it for him. So they've gone from an area where they've had pretty good weather because it's been around the equator and it's been warm and the weather's been nice, but now they're going to head back into harsher seas where it's colder. Our watches on deck were spent in unbending the old sails and bending on the newest and best. Contrary to the custom of the landsman, a ship puts on her best rig for rough weather and saves her poorest for the milder breezes of the trades. The Cloud was stripped of her top hamper, her skysails and royal yards sent down. With her to'gallants still crossed, she was made ready for the rough and tumble work ahead. The seas were greener now and more stubborn. They rolled up under the stem of the flying Cloud as if they would shoulder her back from her course. The skies took on a sterner tinge. A cry of "Land ho!" from the masthead brought us all on deck at a bound. The little island of South Trinidad, miles out at sea from the Brazilian coast, lay on our larboard bow. For the first bit of land we had raised since sailing out of New York harbor. Through the spyglass that old Messina Clark had given me, I examined this, my first island. A wilder, more romantic bit of land would be hard to find. Lofty and sea-scarred, with waterfalls leaping from the cliffs to bury themselves in the jungle below. Surf smashing with a mighty thunder and a barrier reef. Here, pirates are said to have fled with the plunder of Peru, and this was easy to credit. What pictures it painted before the eye, of buccaneers with flashing cutlass, of doubloons and ambuscados and jeweled loot lying 5 fathoms deep. The single peak that crowned the island reared like a gigantic finger, warning us to beware the sterner seas to the south. Scarce had we dropped it astern when the nights fell cold and sent us shivering. When the day came that we had seen the last of the flying fish, we knew that we were in the region of the great westerlies.